you playing?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to What the Bleep Are You Playing? Where we pick up a game, most of the times bad, and decide to play it and then tell you why the bleep we played it. I am the host here. I am Darth Sean. With me I have Viceroy Thomas and also Jar Jar Mason.
God.
So how you guys doing here today?
I should have expected that, and it still hurts.
What the fuck is a viceroy?
So you're the Trade Federation.
Oh, god damn it.
Viceroy.
So I'm the fuckers that nobody cares about until they make memes.
And then they all die in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, oh god damn it.
On Mustafar. I mean, you get killed by Anakin.
That doesn't make it better.
On a lava planet. Honestly, you're getting the best possible death. You're good.
I mean, you could be a youngling. Think about that for a sec. You could be a youngling.
It could be Jar Jar.
You could be, yeah.
Well, if you can't tell, we're playing Star Wars games here this time, as I brought forward the Phantom Menace. Originally on the computer, set up for your Windows systems, but also then ported to the PlayStation, which is what we played. At the time, I didn't know this was a port. And now that I know it's a port, so many of the things make so much sense.
It's like that one bit in a Sherlock Holmes book where like all the pieces come together and it's like, oh, this is why it's
It
that
make more
way.
sense. Doesn't make it any better. Does make it make more sense.
This is a game. This is a game. There were a lot of Star Wars games that had come out even before then, but this is the first real attempt at a 3D Star Wars game.
Was it?
It's not the first. Obviously, Jedi Knight had come out at that point.
Jedi Knight had come out. Didn't Shadows of the Empire predate this?
Shadows of the Empire as well. So that's on that one.
Okay,
But yeah, Shadows of the Empire is... No, it's Shadows of the Empire? Shadows of the Empire might be 2000.
Was it? I thought it was 96.
It might be. Regardless, yes. Yeah, if it is,
Okay,
that's
well,
around it.
this was still one of the first.
This is one of the first 3D, again, and you can tell it's one of the first attempts. It's one of the first attempts with lightsaber battle.
Yeah,
That's the other thing.
it is easily one of those.
Like, that's just the thing. So we played Phantom Menace, and let's tell you a little bit about Phantom Menace, Star Wars Episode 1, the game.
You son of a bitch.
It's a 1999 action-adventure video game released by LucasArts and based on the film of the same title. The game is set in several different settings seen within the film, set during the timeline of the film, with players taking the role of Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and other characters.
It's really interesting. I don't know why this is just now hitting me. Is this the only Star Wars game, other than obviously the Lego ones, that just follows the events of a movie?
No, Revenge
No.
of the Sith.
Oh yeah, that's right.
There is Revenge of the
yeah.
Sith. There's the Super Star Wars games, obviously.
Yeah,
But
those
those-
because they're on the Nintendo.
It's very loose.
I was
very
going to say,
loose.
it's very loose, but so's this.
Yeah,
So,
this does
Yeah.
definitely add things, but it does follow events for the most part.
I mean, it follows it closer than the Super Star Wars games, but that's not hard to do. So
There were a lot of things that they tried in this game. They featured open environments. You had a lot of open that you could explore. You could have dialogue with a lot of non-playable characters. A lot of them. I'm not saying it was necessarily good, but that was something that at the time was really unique. Like this game did a few things here.
I mean, I like the I'll probably say this more, but I like the idea of being able to kind of choose what you say, even if it does make the game unintentionally hilarious.
Oh,
at
there are
points.
moments it does. There's a level where you're with the guns, and you're in the Gun City.
I think I know what you're talking about.
It opens up with everything. And Qui-Gon tells you to go rescue Jar Jar because Jar Jar's in prison. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, be kind to the guns. And I go to the first one, and instead of hitting the button to try to talk to him, I accidentally hit my lightsaber, and I cut him down. And the rest of the guns didn't talk to me, and I was attacked repeatedly by guns.
Yeah.
Because the first thing I did was take down a gun. I slaughtered so many guns. Not just the women, but the children, too.
Yikes.
I don't like guns. They're coarse, rough, and irritating.
Yeah, they're wet and slimy. And
They get everywhere.
They do.
Yeah, especially when you cut them up with a fucking lightsaber.
I think you went through probably a lot of Star Wars fanboys' fantasies there.
Look, one of my favorite bits of dialogue selection in the game is also in the Gungan City. because I will be perfectly honest, Sean has probably played the most of this game out of all of us. I tried to play through legitimately. I'll explain why later, but I got to the 3rd level, said fuck it, and put in a cheat code.
All of us eventually rage quitted on this game.
But one of my favorite... yeah, pretty much. But one of my favorite bits is you go in, you can select these options, obviously, and when Qui-Gon's like, you must go rescue Jar Jar, you can pick Obi-Wan saying, and he says either, okay, I'll go find him, or basically... why the fuck would I do that?
Yep.
Like, why
there's
would
there's
I
another one where you
you
can choose between Jar Jar brought me or just lead me out of here. Like you could really it is. There's a lot of interesting dialogue options. The farthest I got was Panaka trying to sell binoculars to get credits to get into a tour, and you're going around to people trying to sell your binoculars, which was legitimately hilarious. Unintentionally, I'm pretty sure they're like, oh yeah, this is going to be a very interesting mission.
I don't remember that part of the movie.
Nope, yeah, Tanaka selling his binoculars.
I don't remember much of the movie, to be fair, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't in there. But even then, Panaka, Pac-Man, whatever his name is, he's protecting the Queen, and the Queen's in danger, so why doesn't he just use his authority, pull out his gun, and just be like, get me in the fucking tour? The Queen needs to be saved.
Get me to the Senate. The game was a commercial success. It sold over 337,000 copies on the Windows alone by 2000.
I would have laughed so hard if you just went, it sold 337 copies.
The gameplay, graphics, and story were praised, but the camera angles and voice acting were criticized.
That's all they had to criticize about it? Those are big problems, no doubt, but that's
those are the
all
big
they had
ones.
to criticize.
And you got to remember also at the time. And said the graphics are very comparable with what's at the time for those sort of 3D adventures type of games. The gameplay is very similar to those sort of things at the time. And the story, I said, the story's not the problem.
Well, the story is just the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, it's just the Phantom Menace. So
It really does bring up the point of well, for one, you've already got you've got the worst type of movie tie-in game, which is a tie-in game of a bad movie. But then, at the same time, it's also why would you play the game and not watch
And
the
Sean's
movie?
like, I'm about to cut a bitch.
You get, the same effect watching the movie as you would playing the game.
If I were a better podcast editor, right here, I would hit a cut and I would then put a clip in of just saying, these opinions are not not held by these ones. Only held by Mason, who is wrong all the time.
Who is always wrong.
I resent that.
No, I'm only wrong 98% of the time. Get your fucking facts straight.
So it was a financial success, which honestly, considering the hype around the Phantom Menace, is not surprising.
Honestly,
everything sold well.
I would genuinely be more surprised if it wasn't a success because the Phantom Menace had didn't it have lines out through the fucking streets?
Just huge lines, and it was a phenomenon that we wouldn't see in a nerd capacity again until Force Awakens. That is what it was in turn, and then later on, Endgame would give that same sort of thing. But where people were like, I've been waiting decades for this movie, and I've been sitting here waiting, and
I'd also argue it has lessened nowadays because not even Disney's doing, but because there was just a overabundance of it for a couple years. But back then, that was just the power of Star Wars.
Yes, and that was it.
Legit, you could go up to a mic, lean in, and say Star Wars, and you'd get $3 million there.
There were, because at the time, the expanded universe really wasn't doing a ton. There was stuff, but it wasn't you had the Thrawn trilogy, you had stuff, but a lot of that stuff gets retconned by this. The expanded trilogy doesn't. The expanded universe doesn't really take off till 2001, 2002, where it explodes again.
What, you're telling me the Ewok movies weren't didn't do gangbusters?
That's what people before. Those were made for TV too. Anyway, before Phantom Menace, the Ewok movie was all that fans got. That's the thing. There was the Christmas special. The Ewok movies.
No.
There were again. No. I don't want to act like there wasn't an expanded universe. There were still a lot of popular books. We've mentioned a couple of games. There obviously were games, but the explosion of what we know is Star Wars media, games, books, tie-in shows, things like that, started post Phantom Menace. That's where the realization of, oh yeah, there are lots of Star Wars fans still out there, and they will pay money for anything Star Wars.
Which, credit where it's due, out of all the... We should probably keep back to talk about the PS1 game, but I'll get back to it eventually.
Yeah, that's why I choose a Star Wars, because, you know, there's so much
because we can talk about a ton of fucking Star Wars.
We can tangent to our heart's content.
But like, out of the three eras, like prequel, original, sequel, prequel is my favorite era of just shit that you can read or games that you can play or whatever, excluding Phantom Menace PS1. But like,
we'll get more out of that.
But like, that's just my favorite era of Star Wars stuff, because that is far and away the most interesting era to me.
It's also the one that has so much, because George cut back on a lot of stuff. There's cut things. There's characters that are cut. Like, look, the amount of characters in the Clone Wars that are just, oh yeah, that was an extra in one of the, or that was cut out of the Phantom Menace. Oh yeah, that was a Jedi just randomly on a Tatooine that we decided to cut, and they're like, hey, that guy's really cool. Let's put him in the movie.
Get Fisto, baby.
Yeah, there's lots of characters that they've just added, and it's because unlike the original trilogy, where only a couple of years pass over the time frame, I think it's 3 years from New Hope to End of Return of the Jedi? It's 3 or 4 years.
Maybe. Yeah, it's probably 3 or 4.
It's a couple of years past between those.
I think there's a big gap between...
The prequel trilogy is decades, you know.
Yeah, because Anakin goes from like little kid to like 30-something.
Yeah. So like it's a long period of time, because it's 3.5 years between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and I believe it's 10 or 11 years between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. So there's a lot of fill in the gap stuff. And like, while we've gotten a lot of Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith fill in, we haven't got as much in between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, which is starting to actually get more and more stuff. There's a new novel that came out fairly recently, I believe. There was a comic series that was really good called Anakin and Obi-Wan. Really good little short Marvel run. I think it was only 5 issues, but it was a good little Marvel run. So
makes sense.
There's a lot of stories to explore, and you know.
And then you make Phantom Menace
and
PS1.
Look, on our top 5 movie countdowns that we wanted games for, I mentioned that I would like the return of Star Wars movie tie-in games.
Yeah, these are the games that you want to come back.
Yes.
Why?
Well, in fairness...
Because Sean likes making the little baby Jesus cry.
In fairness... if getting this means that we also get Revenge of the Sith, the game, I'm taking that trade every time. Because Revenge of the Sith, the game, is so good.
That's fair. Revenge of the Sith, the game, is very good, which is kind of fitting that arguably the best of the prequel trilogies got the best game, and arguably the worst got the worst game.
I think some of this, and I think we'll talk as we talk about this, is it was learning that it was a PC port.
Yeah, that does make...
And that learned a lot of it, and actually the reception on it, the PC version, while it didn't get great reviews, got better reviews. They've got an aggregate score on Wikipedia that I'm looking at, and it got 62% across the aggregate, so with some of its highs being in the 8 out of 10s, you know, its low being GameSpot gave it a 4.3 out of 10. That was low.
Deserving.
But then you have the PlayStation version, which the aggregate is 54%. And a lot of those same places that were like, the place that gave it an 8 out of 10 gave it a 6 out of 10 on the PlayStation 1.
I thought you were about to say, like, the PC version, the lowest score was GameSpot's 4.3. What was the highest score for the PlayStation version? GameSpot's 4.3.
GameSpot actually gave it a 4.2 on the PlayStation. So, like legitimately, so like, it's a port, and that absolutely became very evident. Yeah, it's one of those where you're like, oh,
I mean,
that makes sense.
Even like for as much as the PS1 version did not work great, I can't think of it making that much more sense in a PC.
This is where I know that Mason is a young buck. A young lad. Jar Jar Mason, it's okay. It means have you ever played a PC game with a joystick?
No.
There you go. This game was clearly designed with a joystick in mind. And that is why some of the controls on the PlayStation are absolutely infuriating, even with the analog sticks.
Oh, see, I guess I'm a young buck too, because my first thought was, hey, you have a mouse control, so maybe you don't need the fucking reticle.
It was probably a joystick moving around that you would move around with button up here, button up on top of there. That would be my guess.
Well, I can't imagine that would make it a lot better, though, because, spoilers...
The camera's still bad.
Yeah, the camera's bad, because fucking... for those who have not seen this game, the camera is at a very top-down angle, maybe slightly behind the back, but mostly top-down.
Basically how PlayStation and N64 games in that model almost all were top-down.
Yeah,
but the problem is the camera is more static up-down. It doesn't move lower while it rotates
It doesn't really
around.
move at all.
Oh, it moves
really-
around.
I mean, it follows.
Yeah, it follows you, but it doesn't really move at all. Like
and
stays
that
in
can
one
get you
position.
stuck. You can walk behind something, and suddenly the camera, you don't see yourself because the tree is in the way.
It reminds me a lot of like the Gran Turismo camera. Like you remember the early Gran Turismo games, it was right behind you at all times. Like even if you crashed, it was like stuck behind
No,
you.
I do get what you're talking about, but even then, those got sequels where you could like change the camera, right?
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Especially in the later versions when it really went into racing simulator.
Yeah,
That's fair.
the camera definitely did get better.
That's fair, but this game didn't get that chance because there was no Phantom Menace 3.
Yeah, Thomas looked up the studio that made this game. So because there was no Wikipedia article, Thomas did some deep diving research to tell us about
What is it? A giant monkey?
AKA, I looked it up on Google.
Big
and
Ape Productions.
I was gonna say
Big
it is
Ape.
it is Big Ape, so that is close.
who developed it.
Yeah, Big Ape developed this studio. This is one of 4 games on their resume. The other four, God damn it, I can do math. The other 3 include Herc's Adventure on the Sega Saturn, The Simpsons Wrestling on PS1, and Celebrity Deathmatch on the PS2.
Oh.
Which, I was going to say, Mason, as soon as that happened, Mason just got the realization in his eyes of, oh no.
Future episode list right there.
The same question that we asked when we did Marvel Nemesis, Rise of the Imperfects. I'm going to get that name again. I'm like, we played it. I don't need to remember it anymore. Delete from the memory banks. But the same thing we asked when we played Marvel Nemesis was, how did the studio that developed it, how did they get this big license? Like, how? It's the same thing here. And were those all, I guess the Sega Saturn probably would have been before, so.
The Sega Saturn, this was their second game. Herc's Adventure was their first. I'm thinking, because Herc's Adventure, I haven't played it, but it looks solid. Like,
So
it
it's
looks
probably like they did a solid game here. You want to develop a PC game for the...
and you're right, that is very similar to Marvel Nemesis.
Yeah, like this small studio, like how this giant license that is, and it's not like that LucasArts wasn't making good stuff consistently.
Well, because I can imagine LucasArts probably wanted to focus on other stuff.
Oh,
They
and
wanted to
yeah, of course
focus
they
on
were.
Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast, or whatever.
Yeah.
So they probably outsourced this to another
It's
company.
just interesting that it was this company that's about all they've done.
Well, I can imagine it was either one, they did the one good game and they were like, hey, do that, but for Phantom Menace, or 2, they were cheap.
That's fine, yeah.
Those are the types of business moves that lead you to get bought out by Disney and then shut down.
So the type of business moves that lead you to make Phantom Menace on PS1.
That as well.
God, LucasArts was so good.
They're kind of coming back.
They are kind of, yeah, they are. There's a couple things coming back. We might get some of them, but it's like they were just, and again, some of it was just there's a lot of quantity as well. That they missed when they missed. You're like, oh well, there's 5 other games that I'm going to play this year.
I was going to say, when they released a bad Star Wars game, it's like they have like 7 others.
There were the day when Star Wars games, you were like, oh, it's a year. There are going to be 4 Star Wars games this year. To, well, I might get one in the next decade.
Hey, look, 4 if you include the consoles, 24 if you include the Game Boy Advance.
Which we're about to get to the era where they released so many Game Boy Advance games.
And a lot of them were for Attack of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones is more, and they aren't all bad. They're actually pretty good. There's a couple I might even suggest we play on this.
Because I think, was it for the Game Boy Advance, again, Revenge of the Sith was actually pretty fun because it's just
Yeah.
the side-scrolling beat 'em up. That's pretty
The Attack of the
kick-ass.
Clones. Attack of the Clones for the Game Boy Advance is pretty fun. There's one called
Well, obviously it is because it's based on the best prequel.
Dooku's Quest or something like that. Like it's something like you're Anakin, you're back on Tatooine doing something, and it feels very super Star Wars esque in that it's hard as hell.
Oh, bitches.
And they just kind of drop you in, and they're like, "Yeah, go do things."
Well, to be fair, that's probably how it would be for Anakin. Just get yeeted on the Tatooine. Hey, have a nice life with your robot arm. Go fuck shit up.
Weirdly, that Attack of the Clones in a lot of ways I don't want to say killed people's fandom, but just a lot of people gave up on Star Wars during Attack of the Clones, and before coming back either for Revenge of the Sith or later on. It is legitimately probably the golden era of video games for Star Wars is Attack of the Clones. There's so many good games.
There are so many good ones. Which is weird because it never had an official tie-in game.
Now, I think Game Boy Advance is the only one that had the official tie-in.
Yeah,
because it had the one for the Game Boy Advance, and then it had that weird Clone Wars game.
There's a Clone Wars game. Is that the one that came with the Tetris? I think I have that. That came with Tetris.
Did it come with Tetris?
On the Xbox, I think it's the Tetris, A-side Tetris.
I got the GameCube version, and I got it used, so I don't know.
That might be the one I'm thinking of. There's a game that we might play in the future, Star Wars Padawan Obi-Wan for the Xbox, which is considered by most people the good Phantom Menace game.
Well, because I imagine that one actually had more development time. Because the one thing I could not find on this game, again, kind of circling it back, I could not find any development history.
There's not a lot.
All I could find was, Big Ape did it. Yeah. And I don't know how.
There's not a lot behind the scenes, which is weird for a game that would have been of this size and this, this is the tie-in to the biggest, most anticipated movie of the 90s.
Yeah.
It's interesting that, you can't find any information on it because...
Yeah, you can't find, anything, which is astonishing.
What would there really be? What mystery is there? It's a Phantom Menace, the game.
I mean, there's always going to be interesting development stories. Who knows? Maybe there was some stuff going on. Maybe Big Ape had this big, epic, grand fantasy planned out. And then it was no, you got to put it on the PC in 2 weeks or whatever.
Delete all the hard drives. Get rid of all evidence that we made it.
You end up with a Toy Story 2 thing where they accidentally deleted.
I was about to make that joke. Yeah, they accidentally deleted the game. They're like, fuck.
So, the gameplay of this game. As we've talked around a lot of the game, and we're like, I guess we could talk about the actual gameplay here.
Imagine Tomb Raider 1, all these action games on the PS1, but bad.
There is a lot of, at the time, Tomb Raider is, I think, probably the inspiration of a lot of the early Tomb Raider. It does play fairly similar to Tomb Raider, and especially, it's been a few years since I picked up Tomb Raider 1, but I remember even in the 90s hating Tomb Raider 1's controls.
Well, because they're kind of tankish, if I remember correctly.
If I remember right, but something about the 90s on the PlayStation and the 64, even the Dreamcast, and it wasn't until the next generation cycle till they kind of fixed platforming. Because if you weren't Mario 64, you probably weren't a particularly good platformer.
Or Crash Bandicoot.
But Crash Bandicoot wasn't a platformer. I mean, I guess kind of.
Crash Bandicoot.
It's more of a straightforward, again, 3D platformer is more what I'm talking about.
It has platforms.
Crash Bandicoot is a very different beast from Mario 64. Yeah. It is still platforming.
It is platforming, but
it's very much more based on the timing than actually
it's closer
directing yourself.
It's closer to Super Mario Bros. Than it is to Super Mario 64. It's closer to that style. Just it changed the angle on a lot of things.
And Tomb Raider and Phantom Menace PS1 are very much trying to be Mario 64.
The platforming is bad. There's really no way around it, and some of that is just playing it in a modern experience when you're putting in your mind back in the day. Because I remember not hating the platforming back in the day. The camera bothered me back in the day. I do remember that. let's see how many times I can say back in the day. And
a single thought.
Back in the 90s, I was in an unsuccessful TV
but
show.
the platforming is just, it's not good.
No.
And then you add that the action, look, we're still 6 years till they get an actual decent lightsaber game. So it's not like lightsabers were a problem for a while.
Yeah, even the well-received Star Wars games like Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy, Dark Outlaw, whatever, they have lightsabers in them, but really all you do is just press the button over and over again.
Even something like KOTOR would come out and it's all turn-based and well, not necessarily turn-based, but it's RPG based on the attack, so you're not as worried about timing and combat and trying to block things. And it's not until Revenge of the Sith the game that we really got an actual
where we got really good lightsaber combat.
What's the issue with the they're laser swords? How complicated are laser swords?
You'd be surprised.
A lot of coding. A lot of coding.
Hey, no. We had perfect lightsaber combat. It's called Masters of Terras Kasi.
You know, a good point. A game that will be played at some point in the future when we get a hold of a copy.
I was going to say when we can find
when we find a copy, that game will be talked about.
Perfect?
Perfect in my eyes.
Perfection. There's never been a better game than Masters of Terras Kasi.
In Terras Kasi. Look, it's perfect in the same way I think Street Fighter the movie is perfect. Let's put it like that.
One thing I noticed early on in the game,
Mason lost all respect.
not on the platform, but also the out-of-game cinematics, where like you're not like in the actual game. Those aren't awful. The PlayStation struggles running them. It struggles running them, but they don't look awful. They look good at the time. And I'm sure on the PC they looked even better. But the in-game, like when you're playing it goes straight to your play on there. God, those cinematics are bad and aged. They weren't good then.
It's very much like, again, we talked about this a lot. We were more laughing about it then, but in our games that wanted to be like movies we wanted to be games episode, we talked a lot about this era of graphics and how Muppety it was. Because they're puppets. They're just constantly moving up and down. They're like fucking Rankin Bass specials.
It reminded me a lot of times when they're talking, there's a scene with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan early in the beginning, and the camera turns around and moves right in front of like Qui-Gon, and it's South Park Canadian is his mouth bouncing up and down. His head is bouncing up and down like a South Park Canadian. And it's just, it takes you out of any, like, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm playing Star Wars, when you're like, it's the South Park Canadian.
It's a South Park Canadian.
And the PS1 can't really do faces, can it?
No.
The PS1 couldn't do a whole...
Polygons are blocky.
Like, even the best PS1 games, like... The game that immediately comes to mind when I think of bad PS1 faces in a good game is Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, because there's no faces in Metal Gear
Oh
Solid.
yeah, even at the time, breathtaking graphics and things like Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VIII, when you now look at them in a scope, you're like, oh, there's like a meme from Final Fantasy VIII that like talks about your beautiful face, Squall, and then they actually show the picture and it's like just like it looks like his face is melting.
I was gonna say it's just like the two lines or whatever.
It's so funny. But yeah, and it wasn't until the end of the PlayStation cycle when they started to really get faces and movement of humans down, which is why PS2 has that's not as much of the struggle in the PS2 era over a lot of games. There's some just incredible cinematics done on the PS2.
Like the cinematics on PS2 specifically for not even just the PS2, the PS2 era, for the cinematics for stuff like Final Fantasy, the Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes thing.
Oh yeah.
Just all
Kingdom Hearts, even things like Jack and Daxter,
Sonic Heroes.
Like the PlayStation looked good, eventually, but our PlayStation 2 looked good, but you had to get through some of the blockiness that was the PS1.
Which again, this is a bad game. Don't get me wrong, but that's not necessarily the Phantom Menace's fault.
No, I mean it's an error. It's from its time.
Yeah,
and that's
I love Toy Story 2. I think I've mentioned it somehow every episode of this damn podcast.
You're gonna have to play it eventually.
Oh, I will. I own 2 copies of it, if you include the PS5 one. But even that one, Buzz looks like he's had a stroke. Like his face looks really bad. And again, that's that's just the PS1.
The PlayStation 1, they were able to start to make things look realistic, or attempt to make things look more realistic. It's why 64 in a lot of ways has quote-unquote better looking graphics a lot of times, because they still stuck with a lot of the cartoony stuff. It's kind of the same thing between like Sega and the Super Nintendo. The Sega graphics are technically better than the Super Nintendo, but a lot of the times the games don't always look better because they were trying more often to go realism. And realism doesn't always age.
No, realism didn't start to age well until late PS3.
I mean, PS2, there are some games that with realism in the PS2 as well that aged pretty well.
I mean, they look fine,
Yeah.
but you can definitely tell they were like, yeah. Let's put it this way. We brought up Jak and Daxter earlier, and that game looks a lot better than, say, Shenmue, which came out around the same time.
Yeah.
Yep. But
Speaking of bad faces.
yeah, this is a game for its era
faces
in
they
a
don't
lot of
make
ways.
any.
So kind of the complaining of the game kind of does go down a lot to the era. But let's get to the things that are also bad about this game.
How much time do we have?
3 hours later.
They give
And
you
another.
weapons. They give you weapons. And
Another
the
one.
lightsabers, it's fine. It's a lightsaber, but it's not great to controls. But it's also at times. But they also give you gun.
And the gun just...
Remember our complaint in Go Vacation of not having reticles? Well, we get a game that has...
is somehow... Okay, Mason, this is the one time I'll defend Go Vacation. Mark it in your calendar. It's somehow worse.
Somehow the weapons is worse than the Go Vacation snowball fight.
Because
Yeah.
at least in the Go Vacation snowball fight, you can... There's not a limited ammo count. You can anger wank your way back to having snowballs. With this, there is a limited ammo count. And straight up, there's no strafing, there's no lock-on, there is nothing that made any PS1 shooter work.
Yep.
And that goes back to it probably because of the PC port.
Probably some of the PC, but even then, I guarantee that doesn't translate either way.
Yeah.
It's really hard to hit things. And when your basic enemies, if you're not an expert or have not gone through this game a ton, you're gonna die a lot. So in essence, Phantom Menace is the Souls era game of the Star Wars.
What's your favorite Dark Souls game? Phantom Menace
Phantom
on
Menace.
PS1.
Because there's a lot of times where it's like if you save beforehand, you go into something, you die. You load your save, you try again. You load your save, you try again. You're saving before things all the time because you're like, I might die here, so I need to save.
Yeah.
Also, the difference between height and taking damage from height is you're like, oh, I made that jump easily. Oh, I'm 2 inches taller. Oh, I died.
That's the thing, that pisses me off with any game. Again, it's not just Phantom Menace, but this is a really bad example of it. When there's such a minute difference with fall damage, and it's not just, hey, you fell maybe 2 more inches, you take a little bit of health. No, it's you fall from here, you're fine. You fall here, you just, explode. You spontaneously combust. And it's like, what the fuck?
The other thing I have for the awfulness of this, really on it, and we read it in the reception and all those earlier, was the voice acting is really bad.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
PS era voice acting is not great. It's why a lot of games, a lot of companies held off on voice acting until the very end.
There were 2 series. Only one had only one game on the PS1, but there were 2 series that did voice acting really good on the PS1. There was Metal Gear Solid, and there was Legacy of Kain.
I also would throw in good voice acting in Spyro the Dragon.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
again,
It's very
it's
different,
harder to
but-
do. It's easier to do cheesy voice acting and make it work in a cartoony game than say a more realistic. But yeah, the voice acting is it's bad, and they're bad impersonations, and they don't always line up with what's going on. It's very funny if you know where you're going. You could run past sections of the game, and the story's still going on behind you.
Yeah, and it's because honestly, the voice quality is not bad, especially for PS1. The voices aren't bit crunched at all. They're very easy to make out. It's just the voice acting is bad.
Doors open. Let's go.
I was waiting for it. I was gonna make that joke, but I knew you were gonna make it, and I didn't want to steal your thunder.
It's just so many things, that this game should have done. I think if they just didn't even attempt voices, it would have been so much.
I think so, and I think a lot of the PlayStation is. I don't think anyone cares if you just had text boxes. And maybe it doesn't fix the game if you just don't have it, but maybe it might have made it a more enjoyable experience. Legitimately, at one point, I just started turning the voice acting down and like the soundtrack up because. I'll pause them on this game. Yeah, if you're from the menu. Yeah, you can turn all
shit,
of
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
I turned the voice acting down, I turned the sound effects down, and I turned the soundtrack up because, look, it's just taken from Star Wars, but the soundtrack is really good in this game.
I was going to say, because it's just
Star Wars.
There's a moment when you're walking through the first level, and you get into a vent area, and it starts playing the Emperor's Throne Room music, and I'm just like, I don't know why this music is playing right now, but God, this is good.
I'm just imagining, like, you talk about unfitting scenes. I'm just imagining Obi-Wan's, like, eating dinner or something, and all of a sudden, like, Duel of the Fates starts playing, like, what the fuck?
But the music really was good in this game.
Speaking of Duel of the Fates, there is a music video for that in this.
Yeah, the special edition that I got that has a Duel of the Fates music video, which really doesn't run on the PlayStation.
Oh.
The PlayStation really struggles to run
Music video / behind the scenes video.
Yeah,
but not about the game.
No,
which
Not
I
of
thought
the
would have
game,
been-
it's of the movie.
because you can't find anything behind the scenes of the game because they just don't want you to know about it.
And I think
We
that
need a government investigation. We need to find out the secrets. What happened?
We need to put a probe into Big Ape Studios.
I don't think they exist anymore. We'll go back in time and do it. Like, I think that is also... This is the era of tie-in games where they were just ads. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, all tie-in games are just ads, but especially, you know, late PS1, early PS2 era, they were just ads.
They're just there to make a quick buck off of the movies.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes they actually turned out really well. This was not one of those times.
Nope, this definitely was not. It's a mess. A couple other like positives for the game that I had.
You found some?
Oh yeah, I found several. Obviously the sounder, but
Look, Sean could find positives in anything Star Wars.
except for Go. No, I can find positives in almost any game except Go Vacation.
Why is that game going to be the whipping boy?
I don't know. Well, until we play another really bad game or no, whatever.
Something that's somehow worse in your eyes.
That's fair. But while the graphics don't hold up on a lot of it, the environments are really well done. Graphically, they don't hold up, but they do. Especially at the time, I was going through the Gun Village, and there's like it's really cool looking, and the designs for everything, because of the bad camera, the bad platforming, and the age that is on this thing. I understand why someone's like, "Oh, that's not good," but I was like, "Wow, this is really good art design. Like, this is really good ideas and really good looks of levels."
I feel the same way, ironically, I feel kind of the same way about Phantom Menace visually as I feel about Phantom Menace the movie visually. It's not great, but it's impressive. Mm-hmm. Like, again, not the humans. Like, we already talked about that, the South Park Canadian shit. But, like, again, I was also walking around the Gungan Village, and I'm seeing there's, like, whales outside and everything, and it's like, oh, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
A shame the game controls like shit, so I'm more angry at the controls than admiring the environments, but it's still cool.
The levels are the platforming elements, so I don't want to say well designed, but the levels are well art designed. Like, the art is really good. Everything looks good. There are weird Easter eggs in the game. I say Easter eggs. When I say Easter eggs, I mean, hey, what's this computer do? Hit button. Why is there a picture of Queen Amidala on this?
Why is
She's on every single. They couldn't have pulled up like different clips from the movie to put on the other monitors. Did they not have enough room on the disc for other clips from Star Wars?
The droids really like that one picture of Queen Amidala.
Look, they had space on the disc for one picture. They were gonna make it count. Damn it.
But art design, it's good. It hasn't aged particularly well, so that is where you kind of have to balance on it. It is a 90s PlayStation game, but playing it, I was like, yeah, like, I'm frustrated a lot of this game, but, like, I can see a lot of the beauty in this game.
I both agree and disagree with you, because...
Then you get to Tatooine, and it's really bland and boring, but that's also
because
Tatooine.
Tatooine's bland and
boring. But
boring.
also, Tatooine was really bland and boring, and also, the, like, Gardens of Theed were kind of cool, but, like, design... There's some really good designs, and there's some mediocre ones later on, but, like, their main designs do work. And they clearly spent all their money on the Gun Village for whatever reason.
Someone must have been a real big Gun fan. They got the one Gun fan that also just happened.
Too much Gun slander.
And also
going
just
on.
happened to be a programmer to be like, hey,
Hey,
we got a thing we need you to do.
hey Joe, we need you to design the Gungan Village. My time has come.
I really did like, despite the anger at some of the platforming, and believe me, there's a couple moments in the Gun Village of like you have to hit, you have to bounce on a platform that's sinking, and then quickly bounce to another one that's sinking, to another one that's sinking, and up. And if you know the controls, you know how hard doing multiple things at one quickly. This game is not about doing things quickly.
It's the running on falling rocks thing that Legolas does.
Except imagine him doing it with Tomb Raider controls. Like he's just holding a PS1 controller while he's doing it. Like, god damn it.
Platforming really, there's a reason the rage, like all the action stuff I can get around. The non-radical, it's annoying, whatever. But the platforming is what eventually makes me just frustrated because it's borderline unplayable now in a modern setting.
See, I can barely get around the combat because, like you said, when you have a lightsaber, it's passable. Mm-hmm. But when you get a gun, it's very bad.
When you can't aim, you can't choose where you're going to aim, and you're just like, I hope I'm firing at the right height or distance.
Yeah, especially like, I didn't play this, but I did see you play it when you were playing as Pac-Man or whatever the fuck his name is. Panaka. Yeah, you can't aim up, and that would help so much in these situations, but you can't fucking do it because of the camera angle.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but...
And I'll be honest, most of the combat in this game, it's just mashing square.
It is mostly. Square to win.
Yeah, like I heard horror
Except
story.
You don't win.
Yeah, you don't win, you just suffer. I got to the Darth Maul fight. God, I cheated my way there. And literally the whole fight, I just was like mashing square. Mason saw it was Pappy slaps the game. Like,
and they weren't there for good animation of lightsaber duels. Let's just go with
hey, again,
lightsaber fighting is I'm sure I'm sure as a kid playing it I was like, oh my gosh, this is lightsaber fighting. Now decades later I'm like, oh.
It's like you get the same reaction out of watching a kid smash his Star Wars figures together.
And that's exactly what it does look like.
Yeah.
It reminds me, Mason showed me this one video. It was like the ultimate Star Wars recap or whatever.
Yes.
There's this one bit where Obi-Wan and Darth Vader like light their lightsabers and they charge each other, and then the fight's just like they're just slowly tapping, and that's just what it reminds me of.
Yeah. So we have two major questions that we like to ask about every game that we play. How does this game hold up? Is our first question.
It doesn't.
No, it's pretty evident. This game does not hold up.
It holds up about as well as the Titanic did.
Especially the camera.
She's going down, sir. The Titanic. No, the Phantom Menace. Oh fuck.
This game is the Hindenburg tragedy of games.
The camera and the platforming.
Let's go vacation.
Really.
No, I'm kidding.
I still would rather play this than Go Vacation.
I don't know about that, brother.
Wow.
Go Vacation just frustrating. I rage quit a lot of things, but I also had some, like, in it, I was able to have fun that I was never able to have in Go Vacation. They're both bad games. This is would you rather get lit on fire or would you rather get stabbed, you know? I'm like, fire is sounding a little bit better today to me.
You want to get kicked in the kneecaps or you want to get kicked in the balls? I mean... Never thought we'd be having this discussion. What's worse, Go Vacation or Phantom Menace?
That's the great thing about this podcast. We get to discuss it.
I would much rather play Go Vacation.
We are asking the deep, important questions here.
Yeah, Sean would rather play Phantom Menace. Mason would rather play Go Vacation. I'd rather play a good game.
We both know that's not true.
I was going to say that's a fucking lie.
Thomas is going to be booting up Street Fighter the movie, the game.
Thomas would rather live.
Yeah, this game doesn't hold up. Its camera, even for the time, was bad. And now, especially in a modern setting, it makes the platforming impossible.
It's
hard to play because
Okay, sorry to kind of interrupt. It says on the back of the box, puzzles. Like, it says, yeah, solve puzzles. What fucking puzzles?
There are lots of
Push this button to
no,
open
it's a
that
lot
door.
of pull this block over to here and jump, and pull this block over to here and jump and push. There's one in the Gun Village where you have to pull a block to keep pulling it to a thing to jump on and push a button, and then pull it to another one, jump on and push a button, pull it to another one, jump on and push a button.
Are these?
And then you push it into a hole where you can push it onto a thing so it opens up a door.
We
That's
get it. You
basically
made
what the puzzles are.
We get it, Big Ape. You made a physics engine. Congratulations.
Did it? Okay, but is this the? Are these the doors that close on timers?
No, but that did happen later. Those are
Son of a bitch.
there are doors timers later.
No, 'cause-
My God, I'm like, I am running full speed in this game, and I'm like, if I fall, I die because I'm up high and trying to get into this door, and I'm like, I made it. Oh, there's a second door, closed, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Because I think you and Eilish were watching me play this damn game, and it had Qui-Gon's doors open, let's go, and I press the button, but then I'm like, oh, there's a health kit here, and I'm trying to find my way into it, and I'm like, oh, I can't get it. Okay, let's turn around. It closes right in my fucking face. Like, you know that one bit in Robots where it just closed in Ewan McGregor Robot's face? That's what it reminded me of. I was like, son of a bitch.
All I can think of there is, it's me, a Qui-Gon Jinn.
It's me, Qui-Gon.
The only casting that'd be weirder than Chris Pratt is Liam Neeson as Mario.
Liam Neeson's Mario. I have a very particular set of skills. Skills that a naked man.
If you hurt Yoshi, I will find you, and I will kill you. Yeah, when he gets stabbed in Phantom Menace, it's...
Our second major question as we try to transition from that.
This went to a weird place. Anyways.
Are you surprised with us?
No, we just played Phantom Menace, the game, so it was going to go to weird places. Our second major question is, would this game deserve a reimagining or a remake in a modern setting?
I mean, we kind of have it. It's called Revenge of the Sith.
Kind of.
But, like...
Also, the Obi-Wan, Padawan, Star Wars Padawan Obi-Wan is a little bit of it. I would like to see a remake of this sort of game. It would be kind of, especially in a Uncharted-esque system, I think could work actually pretty good. Or even if you use the Fallen Order system.
See, my question is, why would you want to do this? Because with the Star Wars universe in the place that it is now, with all of its, Mandalorians and Obi-Wan shows and stuff like that, who would go, no, I don't want a video game based on all the new shit we have. I want a video game based on the old shit from the 90s.
Sean.
They slapped Star Wars on it. Cool. Do you want my $60 now, or do you just want my blood? Okay, done.
Yeah, Sean's like, I can't pay you now, but what if I did this? And he just cuts open his fucking palm.
Would you like a kidney? Here, Disney, take my kidney and give me a new Star Wars game. Anyway, yes.
That's the only reason that I don't think that a remake of Phantom Menace, the video game, is really necessary.
That's fair.
Because we have all this new shit.
Yeah, I don't
It's not my priority of games, but would I play it? Because I think at its core, I do think there's a good game here. It just needs to be made. It needs a modern system, and it needs to be able to have, like, if you just had modern platforming and a good camera, this game immediately becomes
Because
fun.
it just sounds it'd be the same to me if like in the MCU we're like weeks away from from Avengers Secret Wars coming out, and then Marvel goes, hey, guess what? We're making an Age of Ultron game. It's like,
I would
why?
play it.
Why?
Of course you would. Look.
And we would review it here on this podcast.
We probably would.
The moment they're like, hey, it's actually a fighting game, Thomas is like, there!
You know what? I probably would. It's yeah, Sean's like, ooh, Age of Ultron. It's a fighting game. Ooh, fighting game. And Mason's like, it has Scarlet Witch in it. Ooh.
Or no, hey, don't worry, Mason, they used Go Vacation controls.
Go Vacation. You just wag. It's for the Wii for some reason, and you just have to waggle to fight.
Jesus.
I don't necessarily think the game itself should be remade, but I do think there are ideas that could be brought into other Star Wars games. Like, how fucking funny would it be if in the Fallen Order sequel or whatever, you could just put away your lightsaber and then switch to a fucking gun or whatever? Like, again, I made the joke. It reminded me a lot of the Kenobi show, especially the second episode where I have only watched half the show, but the second episode is by far my favorite because it features calm, collected Obi-Wan Kenobi whipping a gun out on someone and blowing up a fucking meth lab.
Jesus.
There are a lot of elements in the game that actually, like, the conversation stuff, which we'd see later again in KOTOR, because that's the style of game, but that actually, you know, I do enjoy conversation-based, like, you know, going around and trying to, even if it's me selling binoculars, you know, I would enjoy play. There are elements of the game, it's just, especially that it hasn't aged well. I play Modern. That's what I say. You know, I play it. Is it the top of my list? No. Would it be like, oh my gosh, that is the game I need? Would I buy it? Yes, I would. I would buy a remake of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Heck, remake all of them and bring me a Phantom Menace. You know, they're like, here's the Attack of the Clones Game Boy Advance game remake and the Revenge of the Sith. They just make them all. They just put them on one big disc and let me play.
Yeah, they just do an HD remake of all the games.
See, I wouldn't want that because they still would have the controls issue.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's why I said it's not just like, oh, I just want like a nice shiny coat of paint. Phantom Menace, while its core is a lot of it, it is a deeply, deeply flawed game that would have to be rebuilt to fix the problems.
Yeah, it just needs a different developer from Big Ape. Who's the developer this time? Giant Monkey. Fuck!
We've rebranded. We are finally coming back after our years of silence. They don't know who we are.
It's Big Ape Studios.
What's your first game? Simpsons Wrestling 2. God damn it!
The sequel that everyone needs.
Not a sequel to Simpsons Hit and Run, but a sequel.
You know, that would be what would piss me off if we somehow got a Phantom Menace game remake before we got fucking Star Wars 1313 back. Oh. I would be fucking pissed. Like, I would come into work and you would just see like fucking steam coming out of my ears.
Yeah. So basically, that's Phantom Menace. It is a game.
Did we talk like that much about the game itself?
We did. Look, you know,
I think we talked more.
People, I think, know that, hey, this game's bad. Unless you really want to torture yourself, I wouldn't recommend breaking it out or spending money on it. But, you know, if you like PlayStation-era platformers and
Get help.
Are also, you know, a fan of pain, you know, sit down and torture yourself for a few hours.
Yeah, if you're a fan of PlayStation-era platformers with an up-down... with a top-down camera perspective, get help.
Yeah,
and then play Phantom Menace on PS1.
Phantom Menace. It's a game.
Do we want to give a tease for next time, or do we...
I vote no, because we never know what will happen.
That's fair.
But, you know, look, we're going to do something different on the next one.
if all goes according... What the fuck was that?
That was an ooh. Like
I thought that was an ooh-woo.
No,
and
no,
I was
no,
like,
no.
what the fuck?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
It's me, Qui-Gon Jinn. Yeah, so we're going to play another game next time. Thank you all for listening and continuing to listen. Give us nice reviews if you can if you listen to us on Apple. Give us that 5 stars. Type up a little review. Heck, even if it's like, wow, these guys suck, 5 stars. You know what? Get it out there, share it. You know, I don't really know what you can do on Spotify. Can you write anything on Spotify?
I don't think you can. You can follow.
Follow us on Spotify.
You can follow.
Do
you
that.
can download.
I was gonna say if you can download, then download.
Follow and download on Spotify. That way we can, get the word out that this is a podcast that you should listen to. If you are insane. But
look, if we're talking about Phantom Menace PS1, like, come on. What other podcast is going to talk about that? Come on, baby.
It's only gonna go up from here.
Or down.
Famous last words.
What's the next podcast? E.T. for the Atari. God damn it.
Thank you all for listening, and you all have a wonderful night.